Welcome to Episode 88, Spotlight, Least Privilege, also known as Control AC-6. Privilege defines the blast radius of a mistake or attack. The more power a user or system has, the greater the damage if that power is misused. Least privilege limits this risk by granting only the minimum access needed to perform a defined task. It keeps authority narrow and temporary, not broad and permanent. This principle applies to everyone: administrators, developers, and service accounts alike. When least privilege is practiced well, a single compromised credential becomes a small incident rather than a catastrophic breach. Privilege is power, and power must always have proportion. Building on that foundation, the least privilege journey starts with a zero-access baseline. Every user, process, or device begins with no rights and gains only what is required through explicit authorization. This approach flips the traditional mindset. Instead of removing excess later, access must be justified before being granted. Starting from zero forces precision and transparency in privilege decisions. For instance, when a new employee joins, their access is added role by role, each approved by necessity. Baselines should be built into provisioning systems so that no default access exists by accident. Zero-access starts may feel restrictive, but they establish predictability and trust. From there, specific rights should be granted only for defined tasks, not entire job titles. Roles evolve, but tasks reveal real need. For example, a system operator might require permission to restart services, but not to modify configuration files. Mapping privileges to discrete actions prevents overreach. Temporary project needs should be handled by time-bound grants rather than expanding the role permanently. Task-based assignments create clarity for both users and auditors, who can trace every privilege back to purpose. By treating access as a tool rather than an entitlement, organizations make each authorization deliberate, not assumed. Groups should be preferred over direct assignments because they simplify management and reduce error. Assigning permissions through well-defined groups ensures that users inherit consistent rights appropriate to their functions. Direct individual grants, by contrast, multiply complexity and invite oversight gaps. Imagine trying to revoke access from dozens of accounts individually when an application is retired. Group-based access turns that into a single change. Groups also make reviews easier. Auditors can confirm which job categories possess which capabilities without chasing individual accounts. Centralized grouping balances efficiency with control, enabling least privilege to scale gracefully across large environments. Just-in-time elevation adds agility without sacrificing safety. Instead of giving permanent administrative rights, users request elevated access only when needed, for limited duration and scope. Automation can approve standard scenarios while logging all actions for later review. For example, a developer might obtain temporary database admin rights for 1 hour to perform maintenance, after which the privileges expire automatically. This approach dramatically reduces exposure to stolen credentials or forgotten elevated sessions. It proves that least privilege and productivity can coexist. Time-limited elevation changes privilege from a static condition into a dynamic, verifiable process aligned with modern operational speed. Privilege must also be scoped precisely to resources, not broadly across systems. A user who manages one application does not need access to all servers, just the relevant instance. Scoping avoids unintended side effects and limits what an attacker can reach if credentials are compromised. In cloud environments, this means defining permissions by project, subscription, or role rather than global admin. For example, a storage engineer might have full rights within a single bucket but no visibility elsewhere. Fine-grained scoping creates containment. It localizes both risk and responsibility, turning sprawling authority into measured capability. Restricting interactive administration by default tightens control further. Administrative actions should occur through controlled channels, automated scripts, management consoles, or bastion hosts, not general user sessions. Direct login as admin or root removes accountability because activities cannot be easily traced. Instead, administrators should authenticate as themselves, then elevate privileges through approved workflows. For example, using a privileged access management system that records each action provides both control and evidence. By minimizing interactive sessions, organizations limit human error and malicious misuse alike. Least privilege in practice means not only smaller access, but also safer ways to exercise it. Service accounts deserve the same discipline: minimal rights, non-interactive use, and strict oversight. These accounts run automated tasks or integrations and often have powerful privileges. Each must have a documented purpose, limited permissions, and no ability for direct login. For example, a backup service account should only read and write to storage, not manage user accounts. Credentials should be stored securely and rotated regularly. Treating service accounts with the same rigor as human users prevents silent privilege sprawl. Automation does not need more power than people. It just needs the right power for the right function, no more and no less. Rotating secrets and removing unused credentials keeps the privilege environment healthy. Passwords, keys, and tokens all have lifespans and must be renewed before they become liabilities. Automated rotation systems reduce risk from stale credentials, while periodic scans reveal accounts that have not been used in months. Those should be disabled or deleted. For instance, if a build server token has not been invoked in 60 days, it likely no longer serves a purpose. Maintaining a clean secret inventory prevents attackers from exploiting forgotten doorways. Privilege hygiene depends as much on pruning as on provisioning. Periodic recertification closes privilege creep before it becomes systemic. Over time, employees accumulate access from projects, transfers, or temporary assignments that no one remembers to revoke. Regular reviews, quarterly or semi-annual, force ownership. Managers must verify that every privilege remains necessary and remove what does not. Automated reports showing changes since the last review simplify this task. For example, a manager might see that a team member still holds expired project permissions and revoke them with one click. Recertification demonstrates living governance. It converts the principle of least privilege into a measurable, recurring act of accountability. Evidence for least privilege includes privilege diffs, grant approvals, and revocation proofs. Privilege diffs show what changed between reviews, revealing additions and deletions. Grant records tie each approval to an authorizing individual, while revocation proofs confirm closure. Together, they form a complete audit trail of privilege evolution. For example, auditors can trace how an administrator received temporary rights, used them, and lost them automatically at expiration. Evidence turns invisible access flows into visible accountability. It demonstrates not only control design, but operational discipline, a record that least privilege is practiced, not merely promised. Exceptions to least privilege must be documented, justified, and set to expire. Sometimes legacy systems or emergency operations require broader access. In such cases, approval should specify reasons, owners, and timelines for resolution. Compensating safeguards, such as monitoring or dual control, should offset the temporary risk. For example, granting blanket read access for a system migration might be acceptable for 1 week with daily log review. Documenting these decisions prevents informal privilege creep disguised as necessity. Transparency makes exceptions safe. Secrecy makes them dangerous. Every deviation from least privilege should feel visible, deliberate, and temporary. Metrics bring clarity to this control's effectiveness. Useful measures include total elevated time, percentage of accounts under least privilege enforcement, and average time to revoke unused access. Trends over time show progress or drift. A decreasing average elevation time signals growing maturity, while stagnant revocation rates reveal hidden backlog. Metrics should guide tuning, not punishment, turning data into feedback. Quantifying privilege helps leadership see the return on good governance: smaller blast radius, fewer incidents, and faster recovery when failures occur. Measured control is managed control, and least privilege thrives under consistent observation. In the end, least privilege means granting the smallest necessary access and verifying it continuously. It is not about mistrust, but containment, the wisdom of limiting what can go wrong. When privileges are minimal, scoped, and time-bound, every action becomes safer by design. AC-6 reminds us that power is not the enemy, unexamined power is. By reducing privilege thoughtfully and maintaining evidence of discipline, organizations make their environments resilient against both human error and deliberate attack. Least privilege, practiced daily, turns control into confidence and restraint into strength. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.